Welcome back to Roaming with Restless Women. Today I have Margeaux Thomas. She's a lawyer with 15 years of experience in commercial and real estate litigation. She represents individuals and small businesses in Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. She specializes in landlord-tenant business partnership and contract disputes. That's got to be hard to do some days. Margeaux is dedicated to promoting diversity and inclusion in the legal field, frequently lecturing on business litigation issues and serving as vice chair of the Fairfax Bar Association Continuing Legal Education Committee. She's authored legal articles and is a contributing author to the American Bar Association's Commercial Lending Treatise. Before founding Thomas Law Office, her business in 2016, she's been recognized as a super lawyer, rising star, and a top lawyer by Northern Virginia Magazine. Beyond her legal career, Margeaux is the founder of Vegetable Forward, a nonprofit focused on educating children about nutrition through community gardens. She enjoys cooking and gardening in her spare time with her husband and her three children, two of which are twins,
Yeah,
which had to be
definitely.
a handful. I don't know how old they are, but while you're trying to open a business, that must have been difficult.
Yes, they're 11 now, and I opened it when they were 9 or when they were 2. So it's
Two. Oh
been
my
a journey.
goodness,
Terrible
you are
twos.
you are a woman with a lot of energy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to start out by asking you why you were attracted to the legal profession in particular.
Um, I think I kind of just fell into law. It wasn't something that I was like focused on becoming a lawyer, or I didn't grow up around a lot of lawyers. I didn't really know that much about it. But I wanted to continue my education after I graduated from college, and my dad was a educator, so he really was pushing, a master's program or advanced degree of some sort. And I was an international relations major, and it kind of aligned with, political science and the law. And I just figured that it would open up a lot of doors to a lot of opportunities, no matter what I wanted to do,
Hmm.
whether it was going to the foreign service or the Peace Corps or, some type of educational career. So, it seemed like a good fit at the time. And I believe that still to be the case, even if you don't want to be a lawyer, it's a great degree to have and does open up a lot of doors.
I'm sure. Well, and what is it about the international piece that really attracted you to begin with in your bachelor's degree?
Well, I love to travel. I will say that. It
Uh,
is certainly a passion of mine since I was a child. My parents traveled a lot, and I've had the opportunity to do a lot of traveling as an adult and now with my children. So, just seeing the economies and political structures of other countries and, different mindsets about things has always been fascinating to me. And when you go to another country and, it's just so different, it's it can be very challenging living in other countries where things are very different, and everything that you've been raised to believe is like just not the case. One
yeah.
example of that is I lived in Puerto Rico for a short amount of time, and they call it La Hora Puerto Ricana, where things are on island time, right? So people get there when they get there, and like you expect the post office to be open at 9 o'clock, and you get there, and then it might be 9:15 or 9:20 or 9:45, and just and here it's like it opens at that time, like, and you're used to that structure, but things aren't, that's not the most important thing, in other societies, that things operate on that level of uh, I don't know, efficiency.
Hmm.
So, there are certain things about travel that just open my eyes to a lot of different mindsets and values, and I really love that. So I got to write a thesis on the political economy in Haiti, and Haiti is a very interesting country, and
Oh,
so,
yeah.
so yeah.
What was the biggest thing that you found in writing your thesis that stood out the most to you? What was the most surprising thing, I would say?
Um, there are so many historical um, trials and tribulations that the country has been through with politics. And, it's just very different than, the political economy here. And I think it's always interesting where people grow up with the mindset here and they feel like what has worked here is going to work in other places. And
Mm,
it's so much more multi-layered than that, and
yeah,
it's very hard to go into other economies and force a way of life on people that have not grown up with those same values or history, or democracy is great here, but it may not be in every other country that doesn't have democracy. And the U.S. is somewhat notorious for believing that our way is the best way in a lot of situations. So I think
absolutely.
that was an interesting twist on writing about that.
So you worked in another legal partnership before you decided to open your own law group. What was the impetus for you deciding to strike out and be an entrepreneur?
Um, well, it was honestly my twins. That was like the transformative experience for me because I was hospitalized and on bed rest most of their pregnancy, my pregnancy with them, and while I was going through that process, I had a lot of time to think about time in general, like how much more I had and what I was going to
Uh-huh.
do with the rest of the time that I had. And my dad had passed away right before I got pregnant with my twins and went on bed rest. So, he was 64 when he passed away, and I was 32. So I think when I was pregnant with them. So, I was like, I'm maybe halfway through this life, right? So I got to make the best of, what I have left. And I always thought that time was kind of like, you have a lot of it. And, you realize that maybe you don't have as much as you think you do. So, it really had me thinking about what I wanted to accomplish and what my definition of success was and how I was going to accomplish that and moving forward. And I knew that being a partner at a law firm wasn't necessarily my version of success. So after I came to that realization, I just, put a lot of time into thinking about what would make me feel like I had done whatever I was put on the earth to do.
Yeah, so you were at that point in your life, you were looking for your purpose. Um, and I think a lot of us do that, kind of in that 30 to 40-year-old age. We're looking for, okay, I got out of college, I got out of my master's or my law degree program. I'm having a family. Okay. I'm an adult now. Okay. What is this all about? And I think that's a fun part of our lives is when we're figuring that out. So when you started your law practice, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had when you were first starting out?
I think it's just a huge learning curve. If you have
Mm,
never run a business before, there's a lot of hats that you're forced to wear immediately that you have no experience with. And I was never anybody's manager. I had never developed a lot of business. I don't have a marketing degree. I don't have an MBA. I don't have a financial background. I mean, you just realize there's a lot of things out there that you don't really know, and there's not that many hours in the day to pick up all of these things. So, you really got to figure out what the focus is and, get on a very fast course to pick up some skills that you need to be successful in business, right? And I found that fascinating. I really am a person who seeks learning and learning new things and pushing myself in professional growth. So I found that to be challenging, but also very self-fulfilling at the same time. So and talking to a lot of people about what they think is important and how they got there and what the resources are that they use has also been very helpful. And just getting out of
yeah.
my comfort zone. I'm a very, very like introverted person. I don't need to be like out socializing. In fact, I find socializing to be kind of draining. So I really had to push myself to like get out of my house because at that point I was just like at my dining room table, and I really
Yeah.
had to, go outside, meet people, talk to people, shake hands, kiss babies, as they say, and tell people what I was doing and what my vision was, and ask them for whatever resources they could provide to help me fulfill that vision.
So when did you decide that that business partnership and landlord tenant and those kinds of cases were the ones that you wanted to focus on?
I would say like 95% of our cases are business partnership disputes, which we call business divorces. And it's basically business partners who are in a dispute with their client, their vendor, or their other business partner. And, I handled some of those cases in the prior firms that I worked at before I started this firm. But, I took a few more of those cases and then just realized that, I really like the challenge that these cases present. Like it can be a niche, but it can also be very expensive. Like that issue of having a dispute with your business partner can implicate a lot of different areas of law, like IP, family
Yeah.
law. Some people are going through a divorce. Some people have trademark and copyright and patent issues that implicates. It implicates landlord-tenant law because they're usually in a lease, and a lot of times both of the partners or all of the partners have guaranteed that lease. So restructuring that, there's a lot of different avenues that dispute can take. So it's always new and interesting and fresh, but it's also familiar in the fact that that's what we deal with. We deal with people with this one specific problem, just in a lot of different variations of
Wow. Okay, so how many partners do you have now?
it. We have a team of it's always an ever changing number. We get six now. We have two attorneys starting, so I hope to be at 8 to 10 by the end of the year. So it's a growth trajectory. But
That's great.
yeah, I get to work with one of the individuals I worked with was a lawyer who hired me at the first firm that I worked at 15 years ago. So, I get to work with people that I've known and that have mentored me, and then I get to bring in. We have a woman starting who just took the bar. She's taking it today. She's starting here in September, so I get to, mold newer attorneys, and I get to see both ends of the spectrum, so to speak.
And how do you, when you go out and you talk about inclusion and diversity, which is one of the things that, you teach and you also lecture about, what is it that you say is the value of bringing in different perspectives into a company or a firm?
Well, I definitely think it affects the final work product. Just
Hmm.
having different perspectives and different mindset and approach, I think, just makes for a better outcome. But I think it also I think community in the law firm that I've built is very important and a top priority. Like I want people to be able to work with people that they like and do work that they love to do, and being diverse and bringing different people into the fold to cultivate that community is very important. And I think that's probably one of the things people who work here would say is the highlight of this workplace is like we put a lot of emphasis on community and not being isolated. A lot of us are remote and work from a lot of different places, but we put a lot of emphasis on how we can bring ourselves together through dinners and virtual events, and we had a virtual baby shower. One of our staff had a baby recently, and things like
Oh,
that. Celebrating people's successes and accomplishments, and having a lot of conversations around core values and how we can all help each other achieve these community goals.
oh, that's beautiful. So when you're talking to people who may wind up being a client, what is your selling point for your firm?
I think what makes us different is one, we have the experience, but are able to package it in a more efficient and affordable um, product or service for people. Like all of us, or majority of us, came from bigger law firms, so we understand the complexities of business disputes that involve lots of different partners, lots of different issues, significant assets. So we bring experience to the table that one would have to pay a lot more to get if they went to a different service provider. So, and we have advantages in being in a small shop and having, that environment. I mean, we can provide more tailored approaches. They involve less bureaucracy, so to speak, because,
Hmm.
we are such a small team. It's easier to craft our services to the expectations of the products that our clients want. because it isn't 500 people that need to buy into some type of approach, or an executive board that needs buy-in from 10 or 15 different people. So we can kind of pivot more quickly because we are lean and efficient.
Hmm.
um, and I just think it's our value proposition. I come from a family of athletes. My dad was a prolific athlete. My brother was a exceptional athlete. I grew up playing sports. So there's this competition mindset that has probably been ingrained in me since I was a baby. So I think people who are in entrepreneurship can kind of like align with that, because they have built something that they put a lot. It's like practicing for a sport. You put a lot into it, and you want to cross the finish line. And you want to achieve whatever success looks like for you. And a lot of the people we deal with are high achievers. And being an athlete, I was very focused on, achievement and what the next level was and what the next medal or accomplishment or division, or, and that is something that is very relatable to a lot of our clients. And we're trying to get them to what that definition of success is, as quickly and efficiently as we
Well, and the other thing about it, it seems like when you're talking about these disputes and perhaps, disintegration of some of these partnerships and stuff, that you have to understand that they're looking for what is their next step. How do I start over almost? And just having that athletic mindset, I think could help in that, just making sure that they keep their eye on the prize, if you will, that there isn't a life after or there's a next step that I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So, I think it is like looking in a mirror,
Yeah.
and doing a lot of self reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am a long distance swimmer, and I'm in the pool or in open water for hours on end swimming, right? And you can't talk to people, you can't hear very well. You can only see like what's immediately in front of you and what's immediately below you. And there's no other time for you to there's no better place for you to think about, your life and reflect on what's going on. And that's kind of the situation they find themselves in this turning point of their life.
Mm.
They need to figure out, is it worth fighting for this business and running it? Is it my time to step away? Is it my time to start something new? Like, it just requires some like blocking out noise and distractions and figuring out what your definition of success is. And I'm kind of forced to do that through the sport that I've chosen to pursue. And, I kind of try to guide them through that process of self reflection and self efficacy as well.
Yeah, it's much more than throwing laws and and yeah, it's much more than the paper. It's much more than the conversation about the finances. It's all about the next most successful thing. And that takes up relationship building skills, frankly. So I'm glad to hear you say that. And also the inclusion part is getting the different perspectives, but then, pushing them away so that you can absorb all of those and then make your own decision based on that. I think that's beautiful what you're doing. So, okay, I'm fascinated, I have to tell you, by your nonprofit because I'm a gardener. I have been a gardener. Right now, I live in my RV because we travel during the summertime usually. This year, I have a new grandbaby, so I'm staying close to home. But I miss gardening. So tell me about where this Vegetable Forward LLC started that teaches people or teaches kids about nutrition through community gardens. Where did that all start and how did you get fired up about it?
So, my parents were avid gardeners. My mom was a master gardener, and my dad always had a garden, spent a lot of time in the
Wow.
garden. And as a kid, I was very uninterested in the
Oh
garden and what
yeah.
the purpose of this was. And it seemed hot, and there were a lot of bugs. And I walked past these, like, we had like the garden of, in our backyard. Like there was everything. They had,
Oh,
they were very prolific gardeners. Let me say that. But I walked past all of that every day in and out and paid it little mind. Like it was like, we had all of this fresh produce all the time, and I was just like, they're in there making pickles. I'm walking through the door, like,
yeah.
it was not the most interesting thing to me as a kid. It's funny how you can like downplay stuff that your parents are really into because it's just like not that interesting as a kid. But yeah, so that's all going on in the background, but I'm not really paying too much attention to it. I was not in the garden. I wasn't helping. I didn't learn anything about it. I just really wasn't that interested. And I don't know. It was like COVID happened, and I was like, I have all this free time, and now I'm at home, and I have a fairly big backyard, and
Nice. Yeah.
we're like, let's think about something to do with all this time that could be productive and try to keep them off screens. And somehow the idea of gardening resurfaced in my life. And, we started really small with just, cups in our living room, and then we took them outside. And then every year since then, it got bigger and bigger. And then there's schools. Then we created a grow room in our house. And then, we were raising all these seedlings. And then we had a lot of seedlings left over because, seeds are very cheap. And although it's expensive to buy plants at stores, you can grow like 100, seedlings and it's minimal cost, right? So then we had
Right.
all of these seedlings, and my kids wanted to grow everything, like blue corn and yeah, red squash, and we have birdhouse gourds growing in the backyard, and just all types of different things that you wouldn't see at a grocery store. So then we started taking those things to their schools because they wanted to set up gardens, and then they said, well, tell us how you did that and how we can, add that to our curriculum. And one of my kids went to a Montessori school at the time, and they were very interested in teaching kids about nutrition and growing food and expanding their palates through, fresh produce. So I got an opportunity to work with them and consult with them on how to, grow that, which was, really interesting. So, I think that my kids have learned a lot. My kids are, well, I will say 2 out of 3 of my kids are exceptional eaters. They try lots of different things. They're very interested in, making healthy choices and decisions when it comes to nutrition, which is an issue that's, very close to my heart. So, it has, paid off many fold. Like not only do we have this great source of fresh produce, I call it my backyard farmers market, but um, my kids I think have learned a lot of lessons through that
Yeah, I was flashing back when you were talking about the pickles
process.
because my mother grew up on a farm, and my grandmother and grandfather had this farm pretty much through my whole childhood and adolescence. Every summer we had to go over and pick. So we picked green beans and cucumbers but and we canned everything, everything, everything. And so it just brought back some really cool memories for me as well. I canned a little bit early when I lived in Nashville on a farm, but I didn't get into it like they did. But literally, I don't remember ever buying vegetables in a can when I was young. And that's something that not a lot of people can actually say anymore, is I they are, I mean, I would say I would take my mom, we called them nanny beans. My mom's green beans that were canned. I would take them over any canned vegetable I ever found at the store. You could just tell the difference
Yeah,
immediately.
it's true.
It's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that because that's really cool. Something that, so simple. It's just getting your kids involved can grow, when you get other people involved, and that's wonderful. So I have 3 questions that I ask at the end of every episode. But before I do that, I wanted to ask you if you had any advice, because the whole purpose of this podcast is to share wisdom that we've learned with people who are coming up behind us. So, can you share something that you have learned in either growing your business or becoming a mature adult or starting this vegetable forward nonprofit that you would like to share with women who are coming up behind us?
Yeah, I would just say that, I think an important piece that I learned along the way was being able to distinguish between constructive self-talk and limiting beliefs. Because we all have these, internal dialogues with ourselves, and those conversations can, just be fear and things that are keeping us from fulfilling our potential, or it can be constructive conversation. And I think it's important to be able to distinguish which one that is. I was in a open water race earlier this year, and it was a my first cold water race, like with a wetsuit, and I am not a cold water person. I don't even like it. I grew up in Cleveland. It was very cold. I was like, I need to leave Cleveland because I don't like cold weather. But I was like, there's a lot of open water races in cold climates, so I should um, figure out if I like this. I should dip my foot in the water, so to speak. So I signed up for this race, and I was trying to prepare myself for what this was going to be like. And I had coaches who were like, you'll feel like you can't breathe and you can't put your face in the water and your body goes through this cold water shock. And, they're telling me all of this, but I've never experienced anything like this. And when it happened, what they were saying and what I was feeling did not coincide. Like I didn't think, oh, this is exactly how I'm supposed to feel. I just started freaking out, and it just all of that went out the window, right? And I'm having conversations with myself about whether I quit. Like I was like, I cannot breathe. Like that's all I could. I feel like I'm drowning because I can't breathe. I don't know
Ugh.
why. I haven't swam that long. I was just all just shocking to me at the moment, even though I felt like I should be prepared for this feeling. And I'm looking at the kayaks that are around and whether should I, flag on one of the kayaks and remove myself from this experience. And then, I start saying to myself, like, why do you feel this way? And what is exactly happening that's making you feel this, you know, you can't breathe? Why are you breathing hard? How do you get more oxygen? Let's like dissect this fear into what it really is, right? And then, I'm just like, slow down, just breathe, just take big breaths, and let's not think about the race or the finish or the time or the people. Just focus on this one thing in front of me is like, how do I get more oxygen in this moment? And then, after that, I, was able to start taking some strokes, and then eventually I started swimming, and, I ended up finishing this race, and, I was like tapping into this feeling of like, if I don't finish, well, I feel like a failure. Like I've flown to Colombia, South America to do this race. Like I've got to finish this thing.
Oh
Like
my
I've put
gosh.
so much training into this moment, and it just, it taught me a lot about resilience. But that inner voice was telling me that this was not going to get done. And it's that is the limiting part. Is that the constructive? It wasn't.
Yes.
I was in an unsafe environment. My body felt unsafe because of this sport, because of the altitude, because of the water temperature. But it was something I could certainly push through, and I really had to dissect that inner voice. And I think that is a really difficult thing to do, but a very valuable lesson to learn or trait to pick up.
Wow. And that's a great example. It's not, a lot of us only have those limiting beliefs and that self-talk in an emotional environment. We're not physically experiencing a lot of stuff like that, like you were. So you had that extra layer of physical discomfort and fear on top of, the or the psychological that was going on. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that because I think a lot of us could use that. Um, that, and I tell my coachees all the time, what are you really telling yourself? What are you really afraid of? My favorite question is, what are you pretending not to know? I love that question because a lot of times that one is the one that if you answer that question, it helps you come face to face with that limiting belief. And you can say, is that true or is it not? And push through it. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So I have my three questions. Excuse me. The first one is, um, if you could close your eyes real quick and in your mind's eye, describe to me what you see when I say wise woman.
great question. I think the word wise to me really means like giving back to people, like imparting whatever knowledge that we have picked up on and helping younger entrepreneurs, younger attorneys, younger individuals who are, just beginning to navigate that road, um, you know, help them with that process. So, I think that's our duty, so to speak, to give back in that way. And, I think that's really what makes people wise is the ability to share that insight with younger generations.
Exactly. Okay, my next question, thank you very much. My next question is, where do you like to roam?
Roam, I think my
Yeah.
roaming is the long distance swimming. That is me
Yeah.
roaming in the oceans across the
Wow.
world. So that's that's my
That's
roaming.
an amazing, I would don't even want to say hobby, but that's an amazing adventure that you have that you get to share with your family. That's wonderful. Okay. And finally, what makes you restless, Margot, in a good way?
Um, I think that I've learned a lot about living in discomfort. Like I'm kind of afraid of things being too comfortable because it makes me feel like I'm not pushing myself. So that feeling of when you're like at the top of the roller coaster and like your stomach is dropping because you're going down
Yeah.
the big hill. That's kind of to me the restless moment that feels uncomfortable, but I know that it's like pushing personal growth.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on the episode. I think you have shared some really cool stuff that women who are either interested in becoming a lawyer or just being an entrepreneur are going to really benefit from the information that you've shared. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Julie Noonan here. Thank you so much for listening to Roaming with Restless Women. If you're a successful senior woman leader who would like to be on this program, please visit podcast.intuitivewisdomcoach.com. If you enjoyed this interview, please share this episode on social media and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Your thumbs ups and reviews go a long way.